So Apple may have just announced one of the most unexpected Mac breakthrough in years. For the longest time, if you bought an M-series MacBook or Mac Studio, external GPUs were pretty much a dead idea because Apple's own support documentation mentions that eGPUs require a Mac with an Intel processor. But now, a new report is making people ask a wild question. Did Apple just approve a driver that lets Nvidia eGPUs work with Apple Silicon Mac? And if that is true, does that mean your M1, M2, M3 or even M4 Mac can suddenly use an RTX graphic card? Well, kind of, but not so really, because this story is a lot more interesting and a lot more weirder than the actual headlines make it sound. Today, I'm going to break down what actually happened, why it matters, who it's really for, and why this is potentially a huge for AI users on Mac, even if it means almost nothing for regular gamers. You are watching TechXSense, let's get into it. To understand why people are freaking out about this, we need to understand the backstory. Apple has supported eGPUs before, but only in a very specific era of the Mac. According to Apple's own support page, eGPUs are supported by Mac with an Intel processor and Thunderbolt 3, which means that official support never really carried over to Apple Silicon Mac. So once Apple moved from Intel to its own M-series chip, the eGPU dreams basically died for every Mac users. If you had an M1 or a newer Mac and wanted to plug in a powerful external GPU, the usual answer was basically no. And it wasn't just that Apple's Silicon Mac didn't support the eGPUs in practice, the bigger issue was the drivers. Apple had no reason to prioritize Nvidia support on ARM-based chipsets, especially since Apple now controls the full chip stack, including the integrated GPU inside every M-series machine. And this is why this story matters. For many years, getting to work an external GPU on Apple Silicon Mac has been talk of the town for many years, but almost nobody thought it could become practical. Which brings us to our next section, what actually happened. The core idea is that Tiny Corp, a small AI-focused company, has built a driver path that allows certain external GPUs, including Nvidia RTX cards, to run on Apple Silicon Mac through USB 4 or Thunderbolt. Report says this setup enables AI workload on ARM-based MacBook using Nvidia graphic cards. That normally would not work in macOS on these machines. And that is the real breakthrough. Not Apple officially brought back Nvidia, not MacBooks are now a gaming monsters. The breakthrough is that someone appears to have built a working bridge between Apple Silicon Mac and external desktop GPUs for computers. And if the Apple approved part of the headline is accurate, the more realistic reading is that Apple may have allowed the driver to exist in a way that it is usable without blocking it outright. That's a stark difference between Apple officially adding plug-and-play support across the Mac. So the headline is more dramatic, but the reality is more technical. This is a third-party breakthrough that Apple may not be standing in the way of. Which brings us to a very important question. What this does not mean. This does not mean that your MacBook is suddenly ready to become a RTX-powered gaming laptop. Reports around this setup specifically says that it aims at AI calculations and compute workloads. And that's a massive distinction. A lot of viewers hear Nvidia GPUs now works on Mac and immediately thinks of gaming. But based on the available reporting, that is not what the story is promising. In fact, one of the reasons why this is interesting is because it seems to bypass the traditional expectation of full GPU support. Instead, this appears to be focused on a very specific workloads where getting access to Nvidia compute power matters more than replacing the Mac entire graphic pipeline. So if you are about to buy an eGPU enclosure and slap that RTX 5090 onto your MacBook to play Cyberpunk, hold your horses. That is not what this is. Okay, now let's talk about who should actually care, because this is where the story becomes seriously interesting. If you work with local AI models, LLMs, machine learning tools, or GPU-heavy inference workloads, Nvidia still matter a lot. CUDA, Tensor cores, software ecosystem maturity, and raw AI acceleration all make Nvidia a huge deal for developers and power users. Reports about Tiny Corp's setup specifically say this could let Mac users run local LLMs and other AI workloads on external RTX GPUs at much higher performance than relying only on the built-in M-series GPU in some cases. And that creates a very strange but fascinating possibility. Imagine liking macOS, liking MacBook hardware, liking the battery life and build quality of Apple's silicon, but still wanting access to NVIDIA class acceleration for AI work. Traditionally, you had to choose one ecosystem over the other, but this could potentially blur that line. And that is why this story is bigger than just cool hack. If it becomes stable, easier to set up, and available beyond enthusiasts, it could open an entire new workflow category. Apple Silicon for computer, NVIDIA power for AI workloads. For creators, developers, and AI experimenters, that's a much more meaningful story than just gaming, which brings us to why would Apple allow any of this? First, allowing something is not same as supporting something. Apple support page still says eGPU requires Intel Mac, and there is still no sign that Apple has broadly updated that position for Apple Silicon. But Apple also has reasons not to fight every computer niche as long as it's not hurting the broader platform. If a third-party driver helps a small group of AI developers to use external GPUs for AI workloads, that's not necessarily same as Apple changing its philosophy. Apple's long-term strategy is still obvious: tightly integrated chips, tightly integrated GPUs, and a hardware-software stack it controls end-to-end. Nothing in the story suggests that Apple has abandoned that strategy. If anything, to me it looks like an exception than a reversal. So I would not read it as Apple and Nvidia are now friends again. I would read it as a very smart third party found a crack in a wall that used to look completely sealed. So, should normal users care? Probably not yet. If your workflow is professional editing, web browsing, editing in DaVinci, music production, or casual creative work, this is likely to change nothing for you today. Apple Silicon is already strong for many mainstream tasks, and the report around this setup are clearly focused on specialized AI use case. If you are a hardcore AI enthusiast, AI builder, or someone who really wants local model performance without fully moving to Windows or Linux box, then yes, this is absolutely something you should watch. But right now, it still looks more like an advanced enthusiast breakthrough than a consumer-ready feature. And honestly, it's still exciting because a lot of the most important tech shift start out looking niche and weird. So here's the bottom line. Apple still officially says eGPU are for Intel Mac, not Apple Silicon machines. But recent reporting from Tiny Corp has shown a way to get certain Nvidia RTX GPUs working with Apple Silicon Mac for AI workloads, which is genuinely big technical breakthrough even if it is not a mainstream support. So no, your M-series Mac did not suddenly become a Nvidia gaming machine. But yes, this is start of a something very big for AI developers. So the safest way to say this is Apple has not announced a broad official Nvidia eGPU support for Apple Silicon Mac, but it has reportedly allowed a signed third-party driver that enables a narrower use case. So, would you use an external Nvidia GPU with a Mac if it becomes easier? Or do you think Apple should just keep pushing its own GPU ecosystem? If you want more tech breakdown like this so that it makes sense, subscribe to TechXSense. I will catch you in the next one.